Now close your eyes for a moment and imagine those people who, against all odds, transformed their lives. Think about the power of believing that you can be more, that you can go beyond where you are now. These people I want to introduce to you had one thing in common. They believed in themselves. They knew that with dedication and a clear purpose, they could create something extraordinary. But it didn't stop there. It wasn't just about believing, it was about acting. They were willing to put their energy and time on the line, willing to improve themselves and give it their all. Because here's the truth. What you can achieve when you combine effort, skill, and passion is simply extraordinary. So, I'm going to share two stories. Stories that are not just inspiring, but carry lessons that can change the way you see your journey. Let's begin with a woman named Rose Blumpkin. In 1917, Rose arrived in Seattle as an immigrant. She didn't speak a word of English. Imagine this, a young woman with nothing but a tag around her neck that read, Fort Dodge, Iowa. That's how the Red Cross knew where to send her. There, she reunited with her husband, who had already been in the United States for a few years. For the first 2 years, she lived in Fort Dodge, but she didn't feel at home. Rose said it was like living without a voice, unable to communicate. She felt trapped, powerless. Then, in 1919, she and her husband made a decision. They moved to Omaha. There, they found a small community of Russian Jews. Finally, Rose began to feel she belonged somewhere. And that's when something changed. When her eldest daughter, Frances, started school, she would come home and teach her mother every new word she learned. Slowly, Rose began to learn the language, but she didn't stop there. She started saving every penny, selling used clothing to support her family and bring her siblings from Russia, $50 at a time. For 20 years, Rose saved. 20 years of effort. Until in 1937, she finally had $2,500, a small fortune for someone who started with absolutely nothing. Rose went to Chicago, bought what she could in furniture, and returned to Omaha with a dream, to open her own store. Think about it. A woman who had never attended school, who couldn't read or write, decided to open a business. And she did it with something far more powerful than degrees or connection, determination and an unwavering belief in her dream. And do you know what happened? She turned that store into an empire. Decades later, in 1983, Rose sold her business to me for about $60 million. But the story doesn't end there. Last year, that same company generated $1.5 billion in revenue. Think about that. What began as a small business built with $2,500 became a legacy that spans generations. And Rose? She continued working until she was 103 years old. When she finally decided to retire, a year later, she passed away. This woman dedicated her entire life to the work she loved. Now stop and reflect. What made Rose stand out? It wasn't luck. It wasn't special talent. It was her determination. She didn't offer unique or exclusive furniture, but she offered something few do: genuine service, honest prices, and respect for her customers. Rose knew that if you treat people well, they come back. And that simple truth took her farther than anyone could have imagined. Now, I want to tell you about another person, someone who followed a completely different path, but also started from nothing and built something extraordinary. His name was Jack Taylor, and his story is a true lesson in perseverance and focus. Jack was born in 1922 in the Midwest of the United States. He was an athletic young man with great talent for sports, little interest in academics. After 1 year in college, he dropped out in 1941, shortly before the United States entered World War II. He tried to enlist in the Army Air Force but was rejected, hay fever, so he tried again, this time with the Navy. There he was accepted and assigned to an aircraft carrier. During the war, Jack flew combat planes and received 2 distinguished flying crosses, an immense honor. When the war ended, he returned to the Midwest. Now about 23 or 24 years old, Jack started working various jobs, none of which offered much of a future. Eventually, he became a used car salesman at a Cadillac dealership in St. Louis, Missouri. Jack was good at what he did, rose through the ranks, and by the time he was 35, he decided it was time to try something different. he proposed to his boss, "Let's start a car leasing company." The boss agreed, but with one condition. Jack would have to take a pay cut and invest $25,000, which he had to borrow. And so, they started the business. But at first, things were slow, very slow. So much so that whenever the phone rang, Jack would let it ring several times before answering, just to make it seem like the office was busy. The truth? That was probably the only call he would get that day. But Jack didn't give up. He kept going. And at 40 years old, with 17 vehicles in his fleet, he decided it was time to enter the car rental market. Think about this. He was stepping into an industry dominated by giants like Hertz and Avis, companies with thousands of cars, and a strong presence at major airports across the country. And Jack? He had 17 cars and no access to airports. But you know what he had? Determination. He knew he couldn't compete in terms of quantity or location, but he could offer something his competitors didn't: exceptional service. He decided that his company would treat customers so kindly, so respectfully, that they wouldn't want to rent from anyone else. And thus, Enterprise was born, named after the aircraft carrier Jack served on during the war. Over the years, Jack built an empire. When he passed away about a year and a half ago, his car rental company was worth more than all its competitors combined. All of this started with 17 vehicles and a dream. Today, Enterprise remains one of the largest companies in the world in its sector, led by Jack's son, Andy, and now also by the fourth generation of the family. What makes this story so powerful? Jack didn't invent something new. He didn't have a groundbreaking technology or an innovative product. What he did was take a common business and turn it into something extraordinary by focusing on what truly matters: delighting the customer. That simple decision was the key to his success. But here's the point: you don't always get it right on the first try. Jack's first car leasing business wasn't glamorous. He spent years struggling to make something happen, with little success. But he didn't give up. He learned, adjusted his strategy, and found the right path. And that's a lesson for all of us. Success isn't about having the perfect idea on the first attempt. It's about continuing to learn, adapt, and find ways to do better. Jack didn't worry about what he couldn't control, the stock market, the economy, or anything else beyond his reach. He focused on what he could do, providing the best possible experience for his customer. And that's what took him so far. These two stories, those of Rose Blumpkin and Jack Taylor, have something in common. They're not about brilliant inventions or technological breakthroughs. They're about ordinary people who decided to create something extraordinary with what they had. They knew that the secret wasn't in the product, but in the experience they offered. They understood something fundamental: customers always return to where they were treated well. Think about this for a moment. Do you remember how much you paid for the last shirt you bought? Or for the last piece of furniture in your home? Probably not. But I bet you remember exactly how you were treated when you bought them. You remember whether you were warmly welcomed, if you felt valued, if the service was genuine. And if the experience was bad, I doubt you returned to that place. Price might be forgotten, but the experience stays etched in your mind. This is one of the greatest lessons any business person, small or large, can learn. And this principle doesn't just apply to the business world, it applies to life. The way we treat people leaves a mark. Rose Blumpkin and Jack Taylor understood this deeply. Both built incredible legacies because they always put the customer first. And by doing so, they not only delighted those around them, but inspired future generations to do the same. Now, I want you to think about something else. These stories show us that it doesn't matter where you start. What matters is what you do with what you have. Rose started with $2,500 and a dream. Jack started with 17 cars and unwavering determination. And both created something greater than anyone could have imagined. But to achieve this level of success, there's something crucial. You need to learn to grow through other people. No great business, and no great life for that matter, is built alone. Rose wouldn't have achieved everything she did without her children and the community she built. Jack wouldn't have turned Enterprise into the powerhouse it is today without his team and his family. And do you know what this means? That you need to treat the people around you with the same care and respect you treat your customers. Because a team that feels valued multiplies its efforts and reflects your values. This brings me to an important point. The people you choose to surround yourself with have a profound impact on your life. Look around you right now. Who are the people by your side? Do they inspire you to be better? Do they challenge you to grow? Or are they holding you back? Let me tell you something I've learned over the course of my life. You become the sum of the people you spend the most time with. If you surround yourself with people who have strong value, who are better than you in certain areas, you'll be pulled upward. Similarly, if you surround yourself with negative or unmotivated people, that will affect you as well. I've been fortunate to have extraordinary people around me. Teachers, friends, a spouse who has always been better than me. And believe me, that makes all the difference. But you don't need to rely on luck. You can consciously choose who will stand by your side. Choose partners, colleagues, and friends who make you want to be better. This is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make, both in your personal life and your professional life. Speaking of important choices, let me offer another piece of advice. Often, we get so caught up in what we can't control that we forget to focus on what's within our reach. Jack Taylor didn't waste time worrying about the stock market or Federal Reserve decisions. Rose Blumpkin didn't let herself be overwhelmed by the difficulties of learning a new language. Both chose to focus on what they could do, offering something extraordinary to the people they served. And that's what made them successful. Finally, there's something I want to make clear. Success doesn't come from hard work alone. It comes from the constant desire to improve. It comes from the commitment to delight, to surpass yourself, to create something that positively impacts people's lives. This is what sets the good apart from the extraordinary.